Tonight, you will do something your ancestors almost never risked. You will close your eyes in the dark, alone, unarmed, and completely unconscious, and you won't think twice about it. Maybe the door is locked. Maybe an app on your phone is quietly arming itself. But strip all of that away, and the truth underneath is this. For hours, your brain will power down, your muscles will go slack, your senses will dim to almost nothing, and you will lie there in a state of total defenselessness. Now rewind 200,000 years. No walls, no locks, no streetlights holding back the dark. Just open grassland, or the mouth of a cave, in a world thick with lions, hyenas, leopards, and larger things that don't exist anymore. Your ancestors slept in exactly the same helpless, blacked-out state you do tonight, in the middle of the hunting grounds of some of the most efficient killing machines evolution has ever produced. By every rule of predator and prey, we should not be here. A sleeping human is slow to wake, blind in the dark, and useless in a fight for the first confused seconds of consciousness. On paper, it is the easiest meal in the entire food chain. So why didn't the great predators simply clear out one campsite after another, over a few 100,000 years, until there was nothing left of us? The comfortable answer is that they just ignored us. Not enough meat on the bone, not worth the risk, nothing to see here. That answer is wrong. The real one is far stranger, and far more unsettling than ignored. In 2023, biologist Liana Zanet and her team ran one of the most revealing experiments in the history of animal behavior. Working in South Africa's Greater Kruger National Park, they hid cameras and speakers at waterholes, the one place every animal on the savanna, predator or prey, is eventually forced to visit. Then they played sounds, lions snarling, gunshots, dogs barking. And mixed in something else entirely, ordinary people just talking in calm, unthreatening voices. The animals were not supposed to fear quiet conversation more than an actual lion. And yet, across 19 species, from giraffes and zebras to the leopards and hyenas that hunt the same nights as lions, the results were almost absurd. On average, animals were about twice as likely to flee at the sound of a human voice as at the sound of a lion, and abandon the water's edge nearly 40% faster. Something close to 95% of the species tested reacted more fearfully to us than to the reigning predator of the savanna. We are not the overlooked prey animal we imagine ourselves to be, quietly beneath nature's notice. We are the thing every hunter on that landscape has learned, generation after generation, to run from first and question later. Researchers have a name for it now, the human super predator effect, and it shows up on every continent where the experiment has been repeated. Not because we are faster, or stronger, or better armed than a lion in any given moment, because across our entire shared history we have simply been more lethal than anything else that has ever hunted on this planet. That reputation runs bone deep, even in animals that have never personally encountered a human being. So the fear was real. But fear alone has never been perfect insurance against a hungry animal in the dark. Something else had to close the gap, and that something started as a spark. Long before writing, before agriculture, before almost anything we'd call civilization, our ancestors were already doing something no other primate had managed: keeping a flame alive on purpose. Scorched sediment in a South African site called Wonderwork Cave suggests hominins were tending fire as far back as 1 million years ago. By roughly 790,000 years ago, at a site in what is now Palestine called Daughters of Jacob Bridge, early humans were returning to the exact same hearths again and again. Clear evidence that fire was being kept, not just borrowed from a lightning strike and abandoned. And by around 400,000 years ago, in a corner of what is now eastern England, the evidence turns unmistakable. Burnt tools, imported minerals, scorched earth, proof that early humans, most likely Neanderthals, had learned to strike a fire into existence on demand, rather than waiting for the sky to hand them one. This mattered because fire does something to a predator's brain that almost nothing else does. Across species, across continents, large carnivores carry an old, wired-in dread of open flame. A fire wasn't just warmth on a cold night, it was a wall, a small, flickering border, pushed back against a world that wanted to eat you, that no lion, no matter how hungry, was inclined to cross without good reason. So what did the humans on the other side of that fire actually do, hour after hour, while it burned? They watched, in shifts. Someone was always awake. That habit is so old, it's still sitting inside a word you already know. Vigil comes from the Latin vigil, meaning awake, watchful. A vigil was, quite literally, staying up through the hours the body wanted to surrender to sleep in order to guard something precious. We use the word today for candlelight ceremonies and hospital waiting rooms. Our ancestors used the practice itself every single night as a matter of survival. Here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. That ancient watch shift never actually ended. In 2016, sleep researchers at Brown University discovered something strange happening inside the brains of people sleeping in an unfamiliar room for the first time. One half of the brain was measurably less asleep than the other, not dreaming less by accident, but actively more alert, more responsive to unexpected sounds, functioning almost like a night watchman standing guard while the rest of the building slept. Scientists call it the first night effect, and they compare it to the way dolphins and certain birds sleep with only half a brain at a time, so they can keep swimming, keep flying, keep watching. The next time you can't quite settle in a hotel room, even with the door double locked and the chain on, some quiet fraction of your own skull is still running that same ancient shift. Not because you decided to, because it was never fully retired, and sleep itself was never the passive collapse we picture. In 2020, in South Africa's border cave, archaeologist Lynn Wadley and her team uncovered bedding made from soft, broad grass, laid down on top of ash, dating back roughly 200,000 years. Mixed into that ash were the burnt remains of a plant called Tarchananthus camphor bush, still used today in parts of East Africa to drive off biting insects. This was not a heap of leaves someone collapsed onto out of exhaustion. It was engineered, a chosen surface. A chemical insect barrier, laid down again and again inside a cave whose entrance could be watched from the back wall. Sleep was not surrender. Sleep was a formation. The fire held the light. The ash held the insects at bay. The sentry held the silence. Three separate defenses stacked on top of each other so that the most vulnerable hours of a human life could pass without incident. And for almost all of human history, that system worked well enough that our species didn't just survive the night, it thrived through hundreds of thousands of them. Almost. In 1898, on the banks of the Tsavo River in what is now Kenya, two maneless male lions broke nearly every part of that ancient truce. Railway workers, sleeping in canvas tents behind campfires and thorn fences called bomas, were dragged out into the dark and killed, sometimes nightly, for the better part of 9 months. Fire didn't stop them. The thorn barricades didn't stop them. Colonel John Henry Patterson, who eventually hunted the pair down, claimed the toll ran well past 100 people. Historians today consider that number inflated, though even the more careful estimates run into the dozens. Genetic analysis of hair recovered from the lion's teeth more than a century later confirmed they had also been eating zebra, wildebeest, and giraffe, ordinary prey right alongside human beings. The leading theories point to a specific catastrophe. A livestock disease called rinderpest had recently torn through the region, gutting the lion's usual food supply, while one of the two animals carried a broken tooth and an infected jaw that would have made hunting anything fast or dangerous unbearable. What makes Tsavo remarkable is not that it happened, it's that it became a legend. It was debated in the British Parliament. It was written into a best-selling book and later a film. An ancient truce, held for hundreds of thousands of years across an entire species, broke for 9 months in one specific place, under one specific set of desperate circumstances, and the world still has not stopped talking about it more than a century later. That is what a genuine exception to the rule looks like. Which brings us back to tonight. You will fall asleep behind a locked door, in a room no lion has ever seen, in the safest version of nighttime any human being has ever experienced. There is no fire to tend, no thorn fence, no sentry, unless you count an app quietly logging your heart rate. And for most of us, no one else is breathing in the dark to confirm, on some old animal level, that we are still being watched over. We didn't just outlast the predators. We dismantled the entire system our ancestors built to survive them, piece by piece, until all that was left standing was a locked door and a silence that no one else is listening to. We call that progress, and in almost every measurable way, it is. We are simply among the first humans in 200,000 years to spend the night truly alone, and most of us never even notice what that costs.